It's approximately 8:32. I want to call this meeting to order. Roll call. Chair is present. Anthony Alto.
Present.
Ed Sniffen is excused. Art Tolentino is excused. Robert Yu.
Present.
Thank you. We also have members Lisa Baker and Roger Morton present. And we have online Chris Moylan. And from Hart, we have Rick Keene. Do we have any public testimony? Anybody in the audience or online? Nope. Okay. Seeing none, item number 3, September monthly progress report. Vance Suda and Corey Ellis.
Good morning, Vance Suda, Hart Project Director. Morning, Chair, board members. As usual, we'll go through the overall key items. Chad, if you can go to page, I believe that's 5. Starting out with CCGS, as we mentioned previously, NTP was issued back in October, early October. We had an official kickoff meeting with Tutor last week, just to kind of get to know everyone, understand everyone's roles and responsibilities, introduce the teams to each other, and have that open dialogue. Since then, we've had task force meetings with the contractor just to get everything ramped up and in terms of design, understanding of what needs to be done, submittals, things like that. Contractor has started submitting submittals, pay requests, things like that for the initial payments. So they're eager to get started on designs and get through the station designs. That's where they want to start first in terms of designs. Obviously, the guideway columns and structures, that will be very fast as well. They want to start that work in early summer of next year. So they're working with our team, kind of understanding what needs to be done. Being that they are a new contractor, they have to understand all the submittal requirements, the nuances of how our CMS or our dot control works, just to understand what needs to be done in order to get approvals, and they can get started with mobilizing work and getting work started in summer of next year. CCUR 4, I believe last time we reported that the first boring under the Kapalama Canal is complete. You can see clearly from one side to the other side of the canal under there. The second boring, it has been underway. In the next couple of weeks, we expect that to be complete as well. So really good progress in terms of getting that borings complete. HTI cabling has started at Waikimilo and Mokuwea. CCUR 4E, so the first 2 138 kV foundations are complete. These 2 foundations are located near or at the Iwalei substation area on Dillingham. In discussions with the 4E contractor, they're looking at a potential delay of 2 months. Previously we reported that we didn't see any delays or any potential delays. In recent discussions with them, there are some materials that are delayed about 2 months. Right now, we're continuing to analyze the impacts to that, to our overall schedule, to the CCGS schedule. But at the same time, we're also working with the contractor as well as HECO to see if we can mitigate that impact. We have hopes that we can mitigate that impact. I'm not saying there may be some sort of impact from that, but we continue to work together with the contractors and HECO to mitigate that as much as possible. CCUR 3, contractor continues with traffic signal and street lights at those intersections at Alakea, Nuuanu. They continue work there. They continue night work at Alakea, so you'll see them at nighttime after traffic is completed. They continue work. We have hopes that they will complete that work here in the near future. No real major issues in terms of that work. A lot of the conflicts that we have seen, we're working on resolutions there, hoping that there's no more conflicts that will appear based on all the unearthing that has been done there. Contractor is planning to start surface restoration in the next couple of weeks near Smith and Mauna Kea, signaling that, those areas are completed. They're going to bring that, restore it to its original and hopefully even better in the Nimitz area. So no more steel plates, potholes, loose gravel, and things like that, and bring it all up to the requirements. In regards to the archaeological inventory survey, 15 of the 22 trenches are complete. They continue to make progress there. We're working with property owners to get access to the remaining 7 locations. There are a few locations that we may not get access to, but we're working with the contractor. We're working with SHPD to see what can be done in terms of those locations. But we continue to make progress there. And CCR3, if you look at that contract page within the progress report, I think we're reporting 59% complete, and that's based on the original contract value. What we're seeing in terms of physical work complete, we're looking at more 70, 75% complete there. So just wanted to highlight that and note the difference there as we talked about that previously. AGS, civil contractor, continues to close out items. They're hoping to get interim substantial completion for the airport station in this month. They were hoping they would get it last month, but there are a few NCRs that still need to be closed out that they're working through. Hoping that they can complete it this month and have it in their billing for November. Other than that, other than those few NCRs, they're working on punch list items, cleanup, touch-up paint, things like that. So nothing major there. Core systems contractor at the AGS stations, all the installations complete. These are camera, speakers, fire detection, the UPS system, all installed and complete. Testing continues for all the core systems items. As I mentioned before, you see the trains run manually throughout segment 2 at the nighttime shift when there's no service running on segment 1. Talking to individuals within the project that got to ride the train in that area for testing, witnessing purposes, say that the views from that area are amazing. The ride's really good. So hoping myself I can witness some testing there here shortly in the next few months. But making tremendous progress in terms of testing in that area. As I mentioned before, ramping up to get the migration testing and the cutover early next year to start. We're having discussions with Hitachi, DTS to make sure we're all on the same page. We have a meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks just to talk through what that will look like early next year as we start to do the migration of all the subsystems from segment 1 to segment 2 in preparation for the full cutover of the system to integrate segment 1 and segment 2 and then test it together. So we have the proposed plan from Hitachi. We're reviewing, making sure that service isn't interrupted during the day. We can test at night and then return service back the next morning. So good progress there. We're hoping to have that cutover plan, as we call it, finalized in the next couple of weeks. And that's all I have. Open for questions.
Okay. Before we go into questions, anybody in the audience want to testify? Nope. Okay. Questions? Anthony. Yes, sir.
I'm a little concerned about the 2-month delay that you're talking about. To what extent is there any risk of it affecting the critical path?
Yeah, definitely a risk. It can impact the critical path. We're probably going to see some scheduled float eaten next month. We also are exploring some potential options. So one of the things we told the contractor, CCGS, is they can have all of Dillingham by February. The supply that's being delayed is actually 138 kV line, and that's coming in, look like more April, May, sometime like that. So it does impact their ability to kind of actually relocate those lines. But there is a section of Dillingham that we don't think is actually going to impact shafts. So we're just gonna have to collaborate with our contractor and figure out how to best mitigate that and not have a full impact, but there probably is going to be some impact.
So what you're saying is that the completion of the entire project is going to be set back potentially by a month or 2?
We're not ready to say that yet. I think there's a possibility to kind of navigate this and still meet our date, but we're definitely going to probably eat some float.
And this is entirely due to supply. It's nothing to do with our contractors here.
No, no, at the moment, this is a long lead item that is coming in late.
Any other questions while you look that one up?
Yeah, Chair. I have a couple questions. Some are pretty manini. But I do want to just follow up to what Anthony just said. I know there's a schedule flow chart in the monthly progress report, but is there any way that you all could put a float chart for the major CPPs, like the Dillingham utility relocation and the CCGS? Because each one should have a certain schedule contingency, right? So is there any way, well, I'm sure you could, so I would like to request in the write-up for each of those big ticket items, for you to include what the schedule contingency is. So if you said the 2 months really may not have any impact, well, you know, in what context? Is the schedule contingency for that utility work 10 months, or is it only 3 months? If it's 3 months, then there would be a concern that you already ate 2 months of it, right?
Right.
So the next progress report, if you could do that, please.
Let me just so I can confirm what you're saying. So in the contract pages itself, where we have all the financials and stuff, you're saying also include an area where we can identify some kind of schedule
Or you could just put a note that, you know.
or a
this-
bullet, like a bullet or something
Yeah,
like
this
that.
this portion of the work
Okay.
has a schedule contingency of 5 months or whatever that number is. So when you say it's gonna be delayed for 2 months,
Yeah.
then we have some context as to what that number means.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let me think about. So we're kind of already wrapping up our October report. Like that's done
Okay,
pretty much.
November.
So it might be November, but there might be opportunity for us to kind of figure out how to best to do that. So we'll be in touch.
So we'll look forward to it
Yeah.
for the November report. Few other questions. Since we awarded the contract for CCGS, could we expect a page for CCGS in the monthly
Yeah,
report?
in October you'll see
Okay,
you'll see a
for October.
CCGS.
Okay, good. One last thing regarding CCUR3, the electrical work downtown. Now, we go back maybe like 6 or 7 months. We question whether the September 2024 project completion work is reasonable, just based on the chart that you all provided. And it turns out that it was delayed to December, then now it's delayed to February. And that's fine. I mean, that's not my question. My question is, just looking at the expenditures compared to what we have as the end of project cost for this segment, we have about 56% of the expenditures incurred as of September 30th. Now, we have about 2.5 months before the end of February, or 3 months before the end of February. We're gonna be able to do all that work in 3 months, which is basically 40% of the work.
Yeah. The schedule supports that yes, they can. You know,
Well, let's look at the schedule a little bit.
Okay.
If you could turn to page 26. Now, I think this is the schedule that you're talking about, right? You have the actual percentage,
no,
you
so
have the forecast, but
Yeah.
the forecast is really kind of inconsistent with the trend of what the actual work is being done. You know, it seems like it's just a makeup line that, well, we get to this point, we'll just make it go straight up to February.
So we're still
I
not.
mean, you could understand.
Yeah,
what I'm asking.
understand what it looks like, and As we mentioned previously, we still have the optimization change order that we still need to that we're continuing to negotiate with the contractor, that this does not reflect. So until that negotiated deductive change order is executed, this will continue to look like this. We're hoping, right now it's in the contractor's ball in court to go back with their numbers and revise and address some of our comments. So we're still negotiating with them, hoping that we can have that next discussion with them in the next week or so, and process that change order there shortly after.
Yes, I understand. And I was kind of expecting that's what the answer is, because that was the answer the last time I asked that. So what I did was I actually removed your potential reduction of the contract price on page 27 by the $87 million to come to the 152. That's what you have here. But using the 152 million number, we're still at 56%. Right? So we're still looking at just over 40% of work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that's really my question. And I don't know how in the 2.5 months, maybe we can pay out 40% of the total value of the revised contract, right? Unless there's more change orders coming in that you haven't told us about.
Yeah, we're not confident we're actually going to hit 152. So that is one factor of that. It could go in a lot less than that. A lot of they're having issues billing because of the inefficiencies that they're seeing hitting stuff. They get paid when work is done. They can't bill it partially done. So some of this is going to lag. So there's work in place that's already been done that they haven't billed us for yet.
Yeah,
so there's the math will catch up eventually, but
I understand
I'm not going to guarantee we're going to be done by February.
But
Yeah.
the number I'm looking at that you publish
Yeah.
is not on a cash basis. It's on an accrual basis, right?
Right.
So I'm looking at the incurred.
Mhm.
Incurred doesn't mean that you already paid it.
Right.
I know that's the standard response that, hey, we have a lot of invoices that's sitting in the pipeline that we haven't paid yet. So I'm not talking about cash basis. I'm talking about what you have incurred. And this is the information you put in.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean that is paid. So the 56% is based on the incurred numbers, right? Not on a cash basis. So that means the work's been done. There's a value to it, and you're recording it, but it hasn't been paid.
Yeah, but there's also beyond that work that's been done that haven't even sent us an invoice for yet. So there's still layers after that beyond what's
Do you know
incurred.
how much that is?
Well, like Van said, we think we're actually close to about 70-75% of our contract where we think we're going to end, not the 56.
Okay, so just based on what you said, there's close to like maybe $15-20 million that they haven't billed us.
Could be, but we think when we look at the quantities, the unit where we think they're going to be done at and where they're actually completed today, not based off of what's built, but what we think we see is done in the field, we think it's closer to 70-75%.
Okay, we'll see on the last report. I have a hard time
Yeah.
believing.
No, I get it.
that
I see that.
contractor is not billing you for 20 million of work that they have done, but they're just sitting around and not bill you for.
Well, again, and then the 150 is not quite at 150. We think it's lower than that. So there's a combination that's there as well.
Okay. So if it's not 150, what do you think it is? Or is that something that's private?
I wouldn't want to share. Yeah, I mean, this is a negotiation for these potential changes that's currently ongoing. So I think contractor has a version of it. We have a version of it. We'll figure it out.
So because this is on a critical path and it's been delayed a couple times, don't really mind the delay, but what we do mind is we just want to make sure we get the story right.
Yeah,
Right?
100%.
Okay. Let's see. That's it for me, Chair.
Okay.
Thanks.
Before we move on, Anthony, before we move on, we just want to note the presence of Chair Colleen Hanabusa. Anthony?
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. If I may, look, you were talking before about how Tudor wants to press on with design of stations first. And that's something I think concerns all of us, especially Civic Centre is particularly important. One, because it's the end of the truncated route, and we still are not quite sure how we're going to proceed from there to Alamoana and beyond. And also the downtown station we've talked about previously about how we can do something to beautify it. At the last board meeting, I asked if we could start to see some of the early renderings, drawings for the station so that we can have some input. So can we make sure that we have that by the next meeting, please?
I don't know if they'll be that far developed to provide any renderings. I think first quarter, maybe early second quarter of next year is my guess of when we'll actually see drawings that will make sense. And at that time, we can double check with the contractor as to when they expect to have that and provide the drawings.
But if we, for example, if the vision for the future is that from Civic Centre we dive underground, for example, to get to Alamoana, we're not going to need a tail track. And you guys are going to be designing a station right now that essentially is just to service as far as Civic Centre. And as a board, we've got to be thinking beyond that. And so I feel like we need to have some input at a reasonably early stage, rather than at the point where we're being presented with drawings that would be, what, by the first quarter, what, 60% complete, do you think? Something like that?
Maybe a little less. Maybe.
But quite far along.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's my concern. Not only that, I mean, obviously we want the Civic Centre station to integrate with that huge lot that's there, and I'm not sure how those conversations have been going. And that's obviously going to impact the design of that station too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think any major changes now would result in some sort of change based on what was provided to the contractor for the bid. In terms of, the tail track, as you mentioned, maybe something we can discuss in a separate meeting. Right now, for functionality purposes, you still need that tail track in the interim until you determine what needs to be done, moving forward. So there's a workshop that needs to be made in order to determine what those requests are and what the impacts would be.
I mean, I get it, and obviously the reason I'm raising it this early is because I don't want to be in a position where we're faced with a big change order. A small one to accommodate some changes looking forward. Obviously, it seems to me to be inevitable, but rather not get to a point where the drawings are so far along that we're looking at a big change order.
No, you're absolutely right. The earlier, the better for input. And so we'll go back and see how soon we can get that. We do want to be mindful, though, that we do have a environmental impact statement that says what we can and can't do, and like going underground, something that could risk opening that back up. So there are some constraints there that we still have to build, but you're right. We have to get input earlier than later.
Thanks, Chair.
Anybody else? Yes, Roger.
In looking at the current forecast versus the recovery plan forecast, it's commendable. The project cost looks like it's actually showing a decline. But my question is, this is prior to us doing a full-fledged risk refresh. Is that correct?
What page are you referring to? I'm sorry. Are you
On
referring to?
page 4.
Okay, thank you.
I'm looking at the core.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're showing a slight decrease from the recovery plan as far as the project cost goes. But I'm assuming this would be before you. Where are we on a comprehensive refresh? Are we going to have one for PMOC next time around, or?
So we did work through doing a risk update. We did meet with FTA PMOC a few weeks ago to run through that. Right now, we're working on the modeling and the results of that workshop. We're hoping to have that here in the next day or so. Once we do that, we'll review, verify, and then ensure that PMOC and FTA is comfortable with that. Then we can provide that information. In terms of your question in the decrease in the forecast, and Rick can correct me if I'm wrong, that's due to the not need of borrowing.
Financing,
Yeah.
yeah, financing savings, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and then we saw some credits come back to us. The biggest one being CCR3, and so that's helping now. But as we all know, we issued a big contract, and that hasn't been reflected in here yet. So
That's what I was kind of getting at.
So this will be-
Now that we have real numbers.
yeah, we have real numbers, but
It's, I mean, ultimately, we're gonna have to reflect those real numbers
Yes.
in the report.
yep.
So just to elaborate more on that, going through that risk update with FTA PMOC, once they're comfortable with that, the plan is to come back to the board to present that. Obviously, some of that's going to change in terms of, what we talked about previously in terms of the CPP, especially for CCGS, that will change, and how those shufflings will work in getting board approval.
Anybody else? Yes, Chair.
Thank you. I'm following up on the comment that the tutor wants to plan stations first. And I apologize if somebody asked this question already, but I'm curious because, of course, it is design build. So, and then we, of course, have a contract that we have agreed to. So the question I have is, if they design stations up front, are they designing within a set amount of monies? All I'm looking for is whether we're going to have change orders, because of the fact that the cost of the design of the stations exceeds what we anticipated, if we anticipated anything. And then how are we going to then facilitate that? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So right now, within the contract, the stations are to be designed and built within a budget of $300 million for all 6 stations.
For all 6 stations?
Mhm.
Okay.
So we're working within that confine of $300 million per station. $300 million collectively for all 6 stations, roughly $50 million a station. And the way it's set up is where, as the design progresses, we have the ability to provide input and comment on the design, from station foundations all the way up to finishes of the stations to ensure.
Station foundations, is that included in the cost?
Yes.
So none of this is gonna be buttressed onto the guideway costs, in other words, we're
No.
not.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my next question is, given that, and given that we now are, all but 3-point-something miles short of finishing, what does it look like when you compare all the way back as to the cost of the design plus the construction of the stations? How far off is basically my question, have we been? And I know that we've handled the design differently in terms of who pays for it, but notwithstanding all of that cost is now going to be absorbed by tutor, is the design plus build. So how does it look like? Are we going to be able to do everything within 300 million? Or should we anticipate that we're going to have some kind of a change order on that? Because I assume Civic Center may be a different station than Chinatown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah,
But I don't know we're gonna have that much wiggle room that you can do $100 million, just hypothetically, $100 million station at one site and, 20 million in another. But since you seem to understand what I'm asking, what's your analysis?
Yeah, I think comparing the AGS stations, very similar design build contract, we feel that the station costs will come in at about or under that $300 million, based on what we experienced with AGS.
And you're including construction plus design
Correct.
in that, right? So you're saying that the 6 stations will come in under 300 million, design plus construction.
So what we've seen stations to date coming around somewhere between 35 and $40 million. So that's why we have some confidence that we can keep them collectively under $50 million. But you will see that one of our top risks is the idea that we could see changes and that station costs could go up. So I'm not going to say we're not going to have change orders. It is a risk that we're identifying, but we do feel pretty confident that we can keep it at 300 million.
I'm not questioning that you may have
Yeah.
change orders
Yeah.
along the way. What I'm questioning is whether or not we have anticipated the costs
Yep.
sufficiently
Right.
so that you're not gonna come in here with $100 million change order for, I don't know, 3 or 4 of the stations. you know,
Right.
And then that would be, in my opinion, totally unacceptable, because we do have a design build.
Yeah, and as Corey mentioned, you know, the 45 million that we've seen for a station, that's for the most extravagant, you know, large stations. On average, it's, you know, 35 million per station. And as you mentioned, you know, some of the stations are very simple in terms of, you know, the build of the station. Evil Station is very compact, small, sits right under the guideway. And then you have Chinatown, which is a little more robust, has that overhang over the highway. So obviously that's going to be on the higher end, and Evil may be on the lower end.
Well, it's like, wasn't it the Pearl Ridge Station that all of that changed substantially? It had to go both ends. It wasn't originally planned that it would be access on both ends, right? Though Nate isn't here, my usual question would be, okay, where's my art in public places?
We still have the art contracts in place. So once the tutor is on, you know, in that realm of the design where we can incorporate the art, we have those artists on board.
So we've let the art contracts out for the remaining 6 already.
Believe maybe 1 or 2 are missing. Do you recall? We can double check to see.
Okay, and then I also want to make sure that the I guess the materials and the methodology of the artwork doesn't then add, because we had to do some changes. I think it was at DKI because of the Sato. It needed some kind of barriers or something, right? Because it was glass. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Chair, just one
Go
follow-up.
ahead, Robert.
Thanks. One follow-up question on the stations. I know there's probably some basic designs that, you know, the contractor has to follow with respect to stations, right? So how much deviation does the contractor have in terms of following the design of stations that have already been built? Could they design something that's like totally different? Or is there a basic design that they have to follow?
The drawings that were provided to the contractor were very basic, you know, layouts of floor plans. You know, here's the station footprint. The way the contract is written, it's very performance-based. So the contractor has the ability to make the changes. You know, if they see steel as better fit than what's on the west side for stairs or things like that, they have the ability to propose that. Again, we have the ability to comment and accept or reject, you know, some of those proposals as we move through the design phase. But very performance-based. You know, they have the ability to make suggestions and changes to what you see on the west side for CCGS. In my opinion, the design's going to change significantly. We'll see a lot of different designs and features within the stations on CCGS. And this is all to, you know, bring in the stations at a lower cost. You know, some of the things we've seen on the west side, like the canopy sails and those items, we may not see on CCGS.
Before we go back to you and for the additional check, Chris, do you have anything that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, just, you have a,
Chris, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
I did actually. What is the long lead term item exactly?
I think they said 138 kV.
The cables.
The
And is I'm having trouble hearing. Could you say that again?
It's the 138 kV cables.
And isn't it very likely that we will need more of that as the line goes farther?
No, just in the Dillingham area. Once you come out of Dillingham and go into downtown, there's no 138 kV from downtown all the way to Ala Moana if we were to take that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Anthony, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to keep on beating away on this station issue, but we know that it's more than likely that the canopies have been value engineered out of the station design. And so I think we have to be concerned about aesthetics. I mean, obviously the major concern is to get the system built and to deliver the service, but we're going to be living with it for 100 years and it's going to be elevated in town. And so we have to be concerned about the aesthetics. And so that's why I think it's vital that we get some insight and some input on the station designs as fast as possible, as soon as possible. One other question has to do with our current political moment. The fact that we're going to have an administration that is not sympathetic to mass transit. That's clear to everybody. We have $619 million promised to us that has not been obligated yet. And I'm wondering if you've had a chance to talk with the FTA to see if there's any way that they can accelerate funds to us before they're snatched away, or how secure we can feel that we will actually receive those $600 million.
I can't say with certainty, but we have had discussion on that topic. In fact, Senator Schatz is meeting today on some of that. We do feel confident that we will still get that, but right now, we don't have a guarantee on that. We are in the midst of getting the $250 million. There were milestones, if you remember, in the FFGA about when the remaining payout would take place. The award of CCGS contract was the next milestone, and that triggered a $250 million release, and we're in the process and have been working closely with the FTA to get that. We're hoping to get that by the end of this month, fingers crossed, or early December. So that'll be another big chunk of it, but we are trying to get more assurance that the rest of it is still there.
Sorry, Chair, one last question. When we talk about extensions, the extensions PIG, I hope is going to be meeting again relatively soon. When we look to the future, presumably we're going to have to be looking at whether or not it makes sense to even think about applying for FTA funds to match local funds, or to on the basis of the formula that we currently use, which I think is 20% federal money. Over the years, numerous members of HART staff have sort of quietly said that they think that the cost of complying with FTA regulations and FTA oversight may be even more expensive than the amount of money that we're getting from the FTA. But I've never heard that. I've only ever heard that verbally. I've never seen anybody do any kind of analysis and say, here's the evidence. Personally, I'm skeptical that the added costs of FTA oversight have added more than $1.5 billion to the cost of the project. But I'm wondering if you guys have done any kind of analysis, if there's any way to wrap our heads around that conundrum.
I'm not aware of any analysis that's been done to support that. I have heard that in the past, but I'm kind of in your camp. I don't think that's true. I think that we have had, a majority of our funding come from local funds and a smaller part from federal funds, but I think it's always good to be able to count on federal funds. And I think however we structure things going forward need to be done in a way that if we do have an opportunity to get federal funds, we don't do something that will prohibit that from taking place. So that's kind of the direction that we're heading. And we have talked quite extensively about the opportunity for additional grant money. Right now, I don't think there's anything out there that we would be able to get, but we do have our eye on that for the future.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? I just have a couple follow-ups, Vance. So on the CCUR 3, and I apologize if you shared this information in prior meetings, but the deductive change orders, can you share what those changes might be?
Yeah, so what the team did was take a look at the column locations along along CCR3 and kind of identified where the utilities were in regards to where the columns are, and determined whether or not the column could shift, a foot this way, a foot that way, to accommodate some of the utilities that are already there, or some of the shifts that needed to be made to minimize the amount of utility relocation that had to be done. So they did a very comprehensive review of the column locations, the straddle vents, and kind of shifted things, tweaked things slightly to avoid some of the utilities. Therefore, those lines or water lines, electrical lines didn't have to move, and we could leave them in place. This was a tremendous effort on our team's part from the AGS team that worked, with the AGS contractor on columns, sizing, how long the straddle bends can be, how skewed they can be before you start increasing size to straddle bends and things like that. So they took all of that into consideration, all of their experience, and looked at, minimizing the movements of utilities.
Is that, sorry, go ahead.
So that's where we're expecting, a credit for some of the things that didn't have to move.
Is that where, Corey, I think you mentioned 150, is that where that's coming from? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly where it's coming from.
Okay. So, I mean, I kind of share the same questions that Robert brought up previous, but maybe, I don't know, if possible, in the next month's progress report, if it's possible to do a little bit of a deeper dive on CCUR3 and kind of anticipating some of the questions that we might have, maybe providing some kind of, a one-off kind of deeper dive into it to kind of help us understand where we're at, and that we can, within the next couple months, meet our goals and completion on time,
Yeah,
if
I think
that's
that's a good idea.
possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be real helpful. And then on DB 450 Airport Guideway, just curious, the stair corrections and is this noising? Is that accurate? Noising?
Nosing.
Okay. All right. So how's that going? Is that?
Yeah, at 3 of the 4 stations, they're all complete. They actually look really good. Our project team, Matt, had a chance to go take a look at it. Our safety team took a look at it, and everyone has approved the installation. They say it looks really good. And they're finishing up the final station, Middle Street Station.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think they did finally finish Middle Street as well. So all stations, I believe, are done with stairs. They did come out really well. Nice tread on all of them. So, and they meet the requirements.
Okay. And then on I think again, kind of dovetailing off of Robert's question on the 2 months potential delay claims on what is it, CCR 4E?
Yeah.
I know, I mean, how many occurrences do we have, or situations do we have where, I mean, where this type of situation occurs? I mean, is it more often, or is it not as much? Where I guess what Robert's asking for is a chart. I mean, is this something that we want to do on an ongoing basis, or is it a one-off, or is it something that you can do in a note, in a summary, or?
Yeah, and so when we talk about the schedule flow, we do try to summarize what's going on with the top 2 critical paths, so like the critical, near critical, and you can kind of see that. To what Robert's saying, I think what I understood is somewhere in the narrative where we're talking about each contract, also kind of note what's the schedule health of that area, right? I think that's what I'm kind of hearing, like a KPI, some sort that says this is where our schedule is with relation to this contract.
It's more about the number of months of schedule contingency.
Okay.
So when you say it may be delayed for 2 months, then
Yeah.
we have some kind of context, right?
Yeah. So, and yeah, I think we can figure something out. There's a schedule, so each contract has a substantial completion date, right? And there's obviously a schedule, we can say, to flow from substantial completion. But in terms of our critical path, that substantial completion date may not be the driver for our critical path. It may be an interface with a different contract. So that's where it gets a little more trickier to kind of just put a number there for you. But that said, I do think there's a way we can kind of demonstrate how is this impacting our overall critical path and what days.
Okay, so, and you may already be doing this, but I'm assuming, have you folks been in contact with the utility to see if they can front some of these long leads?
Yeah, so there was some coordination with HECO in terms of the long lead materials. Initially, the cable that was spec'd out, it was even a longer lead. I think it was 6 to 8 months. And we were able to get HECO to approve, said a non-compliant cable, so a normal cable that they don't approve. They approved this cable, and unfortunately, it still had a 2-month lead time. So we were able to mitigate that 6 to 8 months to 2 months, and now we're looking at mitigating this 2 months. I don't know exactly if we asked them for the material specifically, if they have on hand, but we are working with them, as Corey mentioned earlier, on how we can sequence some of the cutovers from the 138 kV. Obviously, HECO would prefer to have all the cabling in and cut over all the 138 kV at one time. We're working with them to section that off. So, as the areas become completed, cables have been installed, section by section, can we turn over and cut over that section before the other sections are complete? That'll help mitigate the schedule so that 138 kV that is cut over, we can bring down the overhead lines, and then CCGS can come in and follow right after that. So those are the kind of things that we are coordinating with HECO to try and mitigate that schedule.
So, maybe on this item too, for in the next month's progress report, maybe a little bit of a deeper dive on this one to kind of help us understand how we're addressing the 2 months, if at all possible, and where we're at in real time.
Yep.
I know this is a little dated, but how we are in real time, where we're at. I'm just curious on the CCGS, and again, I apologize. You may have already addressed this in the past, and maybe I just missed it, or but are we? What method are we using for the CCGS? Are we using the gantries, or is that what are we doing? We're doing something different?
So they did propose a different method for the guideway structures. Again, until their designs are submitted and we review and approve, that's still a proposal that they have, and they've submitted with their proposals. There could be a change in what that looks like, but right now it's still unofficial until they have their designs complete.
Do we still have access to the gantries? If is that still an option?
It's still an option. We don't have any gantries on island, or we don't have any. SDG had, and they pieced them out and recycled them. So if Tudor needed gantries, they would have to bring some in on island.
I had one last question, but I think I'll leave that one for later. Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
Just for my interest on the precast yard, what is that status? Is it mothballed right now, or will Tudor be using that yard?
Tudor's already moving in. SDG has put themselves in the corner, and Tudor's already actively mobilizing.
Yeah, just a really neat detail about, are we still using that trapezoidal concrete box under the gateway, the guideway?
So being that it's a performance-based contract, the contractor has the ability to change that. There was indication during the negotiation period where they proposed a different type of structure. We'll see that in their submittals, whether or not they'll adopt that. But we do expect it to change.
Right, because that is a pretty expensive way of constructing it, right?
Yes, as Kiko mentioned, the gantries, they would have to bring in gantries and they aren't cheap to operate and maintain.
We did have an option on using those before they wanted us to buy them.
Yeah, they wanted us to purchase them, but in order to keep them and store them, we needed a qualified person, and it was more expensive to continue to maintain them than to get rid of them.
Okay. When do you think you guys might have more of an idea on what the type of method they're going to be using?
I'd say around first quarter next year.
All right.
Hey, Chair.
Yes.
One quick question. Just going back to the discussion on schedule. So I heard what you said, Corey. It could get a little complicated because a delay in one area, has impacts other areas too. So I really don't want to give you guys any more work on a daily basis. So why don't we just take this approach? If we could turn to page 39 on the monthly report. So this really shows the scheduled days contingency, right? And so far, up to this point, we have about 500 days. That's our scheduled contingency. So when we talk about, say, certain things are 2 months delay or 5 months delay, if you could turn to this page the next time you present and give us some context on how it applies to this 500 days contingency. It could be no impact. So just a quick example, CCUR 3, it was initially scheduled to be substantially completed or completed by September. Now it's going to be February, right? So it's 5 months late, which in itself is fine. But for the board, we want to know what the context is. So how does it affect the total schedule flow that you have on page 39? So, the next time when we have certain delays, you could go back to this page to give us some context so we could understand it a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah.
And you don't have to put all that numbers on different pages, right?
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll do that.
That's it, Chair.
Sorry, I'm trying to digest what you just said, but okay, maybe I can.
Corey or Vance probably articulated better than
Yeah, I can tell you how I interpret it. And so I think he's saying this, because there's a relationship between the contracts, a 1 or 2, 3 month delay in one doesn't necessarily mean it impacts our critical paths, but sometimes it does. And so what I understood is this schedule page here where we're showing our float, kind of understand what is the relationship between our overall project float and the delay that we're seeing in each contract. So 4E, if we're saying we're seeing a potentially 2 month delay, okay, what is that relationship with our overall program float? So we'll add some context here in this area. It says this is going to impact this many days, and this is kind of why, right? That's how I kind of understood it.
Okay.
But Robert, correct me if I'm.
No, that's
Okay.
correct. Because a lot of times we kind of just focus on the price and the expenditures and stuff, and we forget about the schedule, the float days. And
Right.
to me, that is just as important to understand as, how much this project's going to
Sure.
cost.
Yeah, but with that said, I don't want to forget the individual, helping us understand the individual CPP
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well, and how that's impacted as an individual CPP.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll obviously keep doing that as well. Yeah, but I think Robert's just looking for a little bit more context in this section on how float is going to be.
Could there potentially be some delay claims?
There could be delays as far as into our critical path or the float that we're showing at 504 days. There could potentially be a delay claim, but we're working with our contractors and hopefully to avoid that. We're trying to mitigate it reaching to that point and coming to a solution.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I mean, and that's why I think, not forgetting to understand the individual CPP and how that is important too. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none, I think that's the only item we have on the POC agenda. Just checking one more time if there's any testimony. I see someone else that's joined us online. If there's any testimony online or in the public. If not, seeing there's no further business, the POC committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Five minutes break before we go. Good morning. It's 9:33, and I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. I'm Robert Yu, the chair of the committee, and taking roll, committee members Kika Bukowski,
Present.
J. Roger Morton,
Here.
and Arthur Tolentino is excused. And I also want to acknowledge board member Lisa Baker in attendance.
And Chris Moyer.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Chris Mullen. Okay, agenda item number 2. Are there any public testimonies on any of the items on the agenda, whether in person or online? Okay, we go to agenda item number 3, the October cash flow report and financial update. Richard?
All right, thank you, sir. Richard Oshiro, Deputy Director of Budget and Finance. I will start at the top line as usual and work my way down through any changes that were done in October. So we start with revenue. Happily, OTAT came in at $15.4 million for October. The projection was close. We knew what the dollar amount was going to be. The only other thing that was not budgeted was the interest income that comes in every month. It's at $1.7 million, bringing the total revenue at the top for October actual to $17.1 million. DB 450, we paid $2.6 million in October actual. The forecast was slightly higher, but of course you see that that's a round number, so that was literally just a rounding to the EAC. Other than that, I think you guys actually discussed what else is going on in AGS. Vance and Corey did mention that progress is coming along, so other than the fact that there's an NCR on the stairs potentially, things like that will get paid down the road. So as the pay apps start to come in, you see those large dollar amounts that are happening in fiscal Q3, which is actually calendar Q1 of 2025. Those large dollar amounts are actually payment for substantial completion. So it looks a little backfilled. That's basically what those will be. Those will be station payments. And that last $4.4 million payment is a cleanup payment. I'm going back to October actual. There were no real changes. CCUR downtown, we paid almost $2 million, so it met the projection. There was no payment for non and for CCURE. That should come in November and December. Elevator, escalator, that $57,000 is a normal pre-operations maintenance payment that happens for them to massage the equipment. On-call came in at $600,000, actually more than projection. There were no significant design charges except for FD 700. And I think that was it for the month for large dollar amounts. The only other thing as to forecasts that has already been discussed is the FFGA. So my next 2 weeks will be consumed with putting together grant data and submitting drafts. I've already had conversations with staff at Region 9 at the FTA. So Amy, Ryan, and myself will walk through a draft. I'll send it to them so that they can give me analysis concurrently. And once that's done, we can go ahead and submit it to DOL and hopefully fast track it, because that's a hurdle that we actually cannot step around. But as mentioned, there is a change in administration, and I think people would like to see that particular grant put through quickly. I did move it, just to be realistic. It's not going to come in November. So the 2 slugs of 125, I shifted over a month. Having said that, that's entirely doable. I'm just going to be really busy next week. So
Yeah,
The-
125 in each of the 2
Correct.
months, but we're hopeful we can get the full amount.
Correct.
Just for conservatism, though, we split it up.
Other than that, there were no real changes. GET and TAT did come in higher in November. I just can't tell you exactly what that dollar amount was because I haven't seen it hit cash yet. But it will be slightly higher. And that's it for the monthly actual, unless someone has questions.
Members, questions? None. Go
None?
go
Okay.
ahead, Richard. if
Perfect,
you're
thanks, sir.
done.
Okay, so from that standpoint, then this will flow into the actual and forecasted annual projections. There were no real significant changes here. And once again, this subject comes up every month, and I apologize, it will get updated, but once the risk refresh is done and everyone has blessed the new EAC, we will respread this out and, of course, re-baseline all of the construction projects, any of the support services, and Rick and I will deep dive into any borrowing that needs to be done. So there were no significant changes to cash flow through the end of the project. Any questions?
Members, questions?
I just want to, Chair, I just want to thank you for, because it looks like the columns and the numbers are a lot bigger than I remember, so.
I try. I know. I can't even read the screen, so I apologize. Even if, it'll get bigger. Yeah, as the months drop off,
Yeah.
it'll get bigger.
Right on.
And then when we do extensions, it'll get smaller again, so that's just how it goes. All right, anything else?
Any other questions, members? Chris, you good? Okay, I have a few.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Richard. So, and you probably don't have to do anything on this. Well, you probably will have to, once everything is kind of cleaned up.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at the annual cash flow under CCUR 3,
Yep.
so you still have projections in fiscal year 26, right?
Yes.
So, and we know it ends in fiscal 25. So I'm not sure how often we look at projections, but those are some of the things that, at least from our standpoint, would make the projections and looking at your statements, I guess, not more trustworthy, but, but more accurate.
Sure.
The state.
Sure.
So we know we're going to end in 2020, fiscal year 2025. There shouldn't really be anything in, especially $63 million in 2026, right?
Okay. I'll go take a look at that. Thank you.
We do look at that stuff every month.
Yeah.
And I don't know the specific reason on that one, but we will be doing an update on all of this, as has been mentioned several times before, in the next few months. So all of it will be re-examined.
Yeah, no, I understand there's going to be updates, but I didn't realize that we weren't going to touch any of this, even though things have changed, right? Otherwise, it makes this kind of almost useless, other than you're looking at the current numbers.
Correct.
Now, going on the subject of the update, when do you think the update will be done that the finance committee and the board would be able to get a clean cash flow projection?
I don't know for sure. I'm guessing February.
Okay, that's
Still,
yeah.
as Corey and Vance mentioned, we're still waiting on getting the final analysis from the recent risk update, and that took into consideration the CCGS contract award. We have meetings with the FTA. I think it's the second week of December. We'll be reviewing, the current information that we have at that point with them. If we can reach concurrence with them, then we would tried to bring it to the board as soon thereafter as possible, but with the holidays and everything, I'm not sure if January would be realistic.
No, February is
I'm
good.
guessing February. That could change, but that's my guess.
Yeah, February is good. I know in the POC meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about CCUR3 and, our concern about whether the schedule that is going to be done by February 2025 is reasonable. So just looking at your cash flow, your monthly cash flow,
Yep.
under DBB 511.1, that just looking at it, almost make it, is it going to be done in February? Because what you project in January and February of 2025, it is just so off from the trend, the actual trend that we have throughout the year. So that also raises some questions, at least in my mind, with respect to how reliable that schedule is.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just a comment.
Okay.
And
No.
that's why we always go back to CCUR3, since it's one of the more critical piece of work that needs to be done at the time it needs to be done.
Sure.
Correct. Okay.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Any other questions, members? Chris, you good? Okay, Richard, let's go to the next agenda item.
Yes, sir.
Oh, do I have to call for public testimony for the? Okay. So agenda item number 4, fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budget and the 6-year capital plan. Richard?
Yes, sir. Right. This is the third iteration of this, therefore I will go through this summary if you don't mind. If you have any questions,
Yeah.
question. So the one thing that did change, if you go to the first slide, thank you very much. The total operating budget, it actually did go down, and the reason for that, you all know the last meeting we had, we removed almost all of the board's budget items. We did leave some T&E and meal expenses in there, and of course, money for you all and for Lori with regard to her contract for travel and the like. That stayed in. So the budget is at 174,738, 197 million for FY26. It is down slightly to 137,905. So the budget did come down a little bit versus the last meeting on October 25th. The capital budget stays exactly the same, so we didn't touch any of that. Of course, the contract scope did not change. Next page, please. This page actually did not change a whole lot. It's measured in decimal places, but I'll go through it anyway. The total budget is at 174.7. It's an increase of 36.4 million or 26.3% over last year's budget. Most of the debt is the preponderance of the expense. So if you look at what we pay in debt versus what the actual ask is for the budget, 97% of it is debt related. 129 million is for principal, and the interest payment went down 4.6 million from FY25 to only 40.3 in interest. Labor cost is 1.5 million. It's an increase of 368,153 or 32.4% from FY25 budget. And as to the budget, there's the same amount of FTEs at 72 versus last year's budget at FY25. Next page. This page stayed exactly the same as version 2. So 72 heads. We have 40 head count. That's as of September. God willing, we will be able to fill at least half of the 32 asked, and the authorized positions are at 98. From a budget standpoint, split between operating and capital, 6.7 FTEs are charged to the operating budget, and the capital budget has the remainder of the heads at 65.3. The budget for expenses is $1 million in Hart and 439 for expenses, and on the capital side, in total, it's $15.1 million. Next slide, please. Okay, most of this is also the same. The only number that did change is the city charges. So you see that it's up to $1.8 million for FY '26. It's up versus the budget from '25 by $202,000, which is 12.3 increase. And the reason for that is up until this point, I was using an estimate for direct charges, but we finally got a number from BFS, so I did incorporate that number because it will show up in their budget into ours. So that's why you see that bump up. So as we go through the remainder of this presentation, I guess the main takeaway from version 2 is we did cut the board's expenses. We left a little bit of the board's ask. The main thing is that the actual direct charge from the city went up. So that's your delta there. So it did go down in totality, but the direct charges, as potentially budgeted by the city, although we feel it's a little bit aggressive and high, is going to show up in their budget as well. So we will allocate our portion there too.
That's the so-called central, that's just direct charges? or
That's
is that
just the
indirect
direct.
charges?
I also had to recalculate the case portion of it, which is the 5%. Correct,
Yeah.
But really the thing that changed with direct charge is the thing.
correct. It was mainly the direct charge.
The reason I bring it up is I have heard that BFS is recalculating their case overall charges.
Okay, okay, so we'll be privy to that once that's done.
5%?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, yeah, but the economics of it is still the same. It's still 5% of total operating budget. Board labor costs didn't change. Board expenses, as we mentioned, from V2 to version 3, it did go down by 440,000. That's percentage-wise a very healthy drop, and the 74,000 that is sitting there was approved last meeting to remain in the board's budget. It brings the total FY '26 proposed operating budget to 174, 738, 197, and it's a 26.3% increase. Next slide, please. This more or less stayed the same as well. Salaries the same, fringes the same. The difference that we used to see is because FY '25 was a little bit soft, but it would have been all pro rata had the percentages for benefits and OPEB been the same. Board salaries remain the same, as does the OPEB. The total for FY '26 operating budget is $1.5 million year over year. I mentioned this dollar already. It's $368,000 higher, 32.4% higher. Next slide, please. I'll just talk through some of the bigger deltas here. You know, the 1.2 is our rent basically for a place. It's up 3.8%. That's online with the contract. And then I guess the big thing, just to confirm from last version, we removed auditing services, communication services, professional services, and I left board all others, which is the meals, the T&E, and of course the travel and other related items.
So the biggest thing there is Lori.
Correct.
In the contract for Lori is coaching and a class.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we could talk about the reason why it's in board expenses
Okay. Sure.
later. I mean, we could always make changes to it.
Sure.
We put it in there mainly because of language that's in our contract, so that would be a board expenditure.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's where the real change is on this slide. The city direct charges that's charged to the operating budget is at $909.9 thousand versus the operating budget for FY25 at $449. The change is $460,000. It's up 100%. And of course, case went down because the interest payments went down. And of course, I removed all those budget line items. So city direct goes up, case goes down. City charges stand at $1.8 million. It's $202,000 higher than FY25 budget. That's 12.3% higher. And if you look at the notes down at the bottom, it does say that case is calculated at 5%. So to your point, Roger, if in fact they're recalculating everything, it may or may not roll through here, but as a function of the operating budget, we'll see it hit actual come FY26. Next slide. Debt service did not change. 40 million of principal payments, and I'm sorry, 128 million, 40 more, and the interest expense is at $40.3 million. It's down $4.6 million. The total expense for debt service is $169.7 million. It's $36.3 million higher than FY25. Next slide. Okay, this page also did stay the same. This is budget per recovery plan. The only number that did change is the unreserved fund balance. And just so you all know, I'm gonna lock this number here because every time I change this, it messes this thing up. So at least you know, there's a note there at the bottom that the unreserved fund balance, which is the cash balance that sits on the cash flow, is 618.2 for June as of this month's actual. So the actual cash that we'll have for funding sources is $1.2 billion for FY26. Next slide. Okay, and as mentioned earlier, this slide did not change. Save City Center Guideway because I need to rebalance back into the 793. And that was due to the capital charge of 23,047,415 changing slightly. And those are the only two numbers that change. Highland Transit Center remains the same. Waipahu Makai remains the same. And the total capital budget is $793.6 million. Next slide. Okay, just as a quick reminder and summary, we request the board to approve the 72 FTEs, approve the operating budget of $174.7 million, and approve the capital budget of $7093.6 million. 100 million. That's it. Any questions?
Chris? Okay, if there are no questions, I have a few.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so this is not asking for you to change anything. It's
Okay.
just for clarification.
Yes.
So you are projecting to fill 32 new positions by July 1st of 2025. That's okay. It's not going to happen, but I just want. Yeah, I just want to say it.
Yes.
So your operating budget and capital budget that you put together includes 1 full year of salary for all 32 positions.
That's correct.
Okay, so if you're not able to hire 32 people as of, that starts on July 1st of 2025, that there will be some savings with respect to
Yes,
salaries and
correct.
your capital budget personnel expenses. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you. We need it. We'll take it.
So on page 5, under board current expense,
Yes, sir.
I know a portion of that relates to lower the 74,000. How much of that is for lower? 60.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, if you look at the next page, it shows the detail. It shows that the prior year board budget in that category was 14. So we just added 60, which is an estimate of the amounts out of her contract. So we kept that flat.
Whether the entire change is for Lawrence
Sure,
Township.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I know you explained this before.
Yes, sir.
$160,000. What was that for?
That's for an estimate that the city has told us to put in our budget for potential settlement due to COVID expenses.
Oh,
As a hazard.
okay.
Yes.
And we don't know for sure yet if that even applies to us because we're partly federal funded. We also don't know exactly how the calculation
Yeah.
was made.
Sure.
But that was an estimate provided to us.
Okay, got it. It all came back to me. Thank you.
Okay, good question.
Okay, I got this. Okay, so on page 10,
Yes, sir.
I think at the last finance committee meeting, when you were presenting the budget, we really thought that some of the numbers, while they are accurate today or now, it has already changed, just based on CCGS. And we kind of have an idea of what those changes are. So I'm hesitant to submit something to the city administration and to the city council, documents that we know the numbers are not accurate anymore.
I don't think anything's going to significantly change.
Well, let me go through it. Rick, sorry. So I think on the last meeting, we requested that maybe there should be like a footnote on some of the pages that are affected, that just pretty much states the 2026 operating budget and capital budget excludes the updated pricing for CCGS and so forth and so forth. Because that contract was awarded and the notice proceed was issued in October, right? So, you know, the higher price of CCGS is not a secret anymore as compared to what our projections were before the pricing came out. So anyway, that's really just a comment, and you know, and the footnote was not included in here, which we think it would help the readers of the budget to know that this is no longer the number, or it will no longer be the number, or maybe it's no longer the number, right?
This is in regards to the unreserved fund balance, basically.
Well, yeah, well, and that covers everything else, right? All the expenditures and revenue drops down to the unreserved balance.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's just basically the unreserved balance is our cash forecast that we looked at a few minutes ago. Looking at the end of 2025, that's the forecasted cash balance at the end of that period.
No, I understand. I'm not disputing.
I would say we don't want to keep changing this every month. But if we got to January, February, March, and our forecast was showing something significantly different than this, then we would change it before we went to city council.
You know, I'm not even asking for.
We will add that footnote, but
Well, we're gonna do a resolution to put it in the transmittal letter. I'm not asking for the numbers to be changed, right? Because as of now, we don't know what the exact number is, and I agree with Rick that we don't want to change numbers every month. So, so our request is not for the numbers to be changed, but to disclose that the numbers may change, and it could change significantly.
I think that's a good idea. We'll add that footnote, but I guess I just wanted to clarify that if that number significantly changes between now and when we submit to city council, we would change it.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'm sure it'll change. But, you know, our concern is we requested at the last budget meeting, and everyone said, yes, we'll put it in, but it's not. So, and also in the, you know, it also affects the 6-year capital plan. That is a required document to be submitted. So all those numbers I shouldn't say all the numbers, a significant
Right.
number of the projects, the numbers will change, just
Correct.
based on
Right.
the pricing of CCGS. So, are there any other questions from members? If not, I'd like to have a motion to approve the submission of HART's fiscal year.
Chair, could you open the floor for testimony first?
Oh,
We need
I'm
a public
sorry.
hearing.
Are there any testimonies online or in person? Okay, hearing none. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve the submittal of the fiscal year 2026 HART's operating and capital budgets to city administration and to the city council on the condition that the following language be included in the transmittal letter. And the language is, the fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budget excludes updated pricing for the city center guideway and stations and its impact on the overall project and 6-year capital plan. We anticipate having this information updated by February 2025. So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Roger. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Kika. Discussions? Yes.
Just timing wise, so when are we supposed to submit, by December 10th or?
December 2nd,
Second.
I think. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So this will be the last meeting for
Okay.
the budget.
thank you.
Okay. So any other discussion? Hearing none, I have a motion and a second. Anyone objects to the motion? Okay, so motion carries. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate your time.
Okay, we move to number 5, report on the independent financial audit. Charles and Lawrence. I don't see Lawrence. I see Charles.
While they're getting settled, I'll make a couple of opening comments.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to express my thanks to Charles and Taylor and their team. They did a great job this year on the audit. An audit, I used to be an auditor. An audit is a very difficult thing to pull together and takes a lot of work. So appreciate you guys hitting our deadlines and getting everything done. Also want to thank Larry Flores back here in the back. Larry took the lead on the HART side in working through the audit. So all the audit field work, the preparation of the audited financial statements, disclosures, and so forth. It was a good team effort. So I want to thank everyone. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charles.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Thank you very much. So I guess real quick, right? So I mean, I've met most of you before. My name is Charles Gooden. I'm the principal on the engagement. I've been with NNK for a little bit now. This is Taylor Morey. Taylor is a senior manager with us. He started with us just a few months ago, but he has quite a lot of experience coming over from PwC in Seattle. So I guess we'll start with the communication, the concluding letter up on the screen. So basically right at the beginning, at the end of every audit, we have to provide to the board a planning communication letter, including a communication letter including our planning communications and then our concluding communications. So as far as this letter goes, we audited the financial statements of the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation, which is a component unit of the City and County of Honolulu as of and for the year ended June 30, 2024. Professional standards require that we provide you with information about our responsibilities under auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and government auditing standards, as well as certain other information. And that information was provided to you in our planning communication letter dated August 15, 2024. As far as significant audit matters go, qualitative aspects of accounting practices. So management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. The accounting policies are disclosed in Note B to the financial statements. One change in the current year is that Hart adopted GASB Statement 99. However, the implementation of this standard had no significant impact on Hart's financial statements. We noted no transactions entered into by Hart during the year for which there is a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus, and all significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period. Accounting estimates are an integral part of the financial statements prepared by management and are based on management's knowledge and experience about past and current events and assumptions about future events. The most sensitive estimates affecting Hart's financial statements are related to the Hart's portion of the net pension liability, post-employment benefits other than pensions, also called OPEB, construction delay claims, and then the right of use lease assets and the related leases payable, and the right of use subscription assets and related subscriptions payable. I guess we evaluated the key factors and assumptions used to develop the above, those estimates, and noted that they are reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. Certain financial statement disclosures are particularly sensitive because of their significance to the financial statement users. The most sensitive disclosures affecting the financial statements are the disclosures related to the net pension and OPEB liabilities in Note J, and the construction claims in Note L. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. As far as difficulties encountered in performing the audit, we're pleased to report that there were no difficulties encountered. As far as disagreements with management, there are also no disagreements with management that arose during the course of our audit. Prior to the issuance of the financial statements, we will be requesting a management representation letter to be signed by Hart Management. That letter will be dated the same day as the financial statements, so that'll be sometime, hopefully next week. As far as management's consultations with other independent accountants, to our knowledge, there were no consultations with other accountants during the year. And then as far as other matters go, there is required supplementary information that are included with the financial statements, including management's discussion and analysis, and also all of the supplementary schedules related to pension and OPEB. So we applied certain limited procedures to those to that supplementary information. Our procedures consisted of inquiries of management regarding the methods of preparing the information and comparing the information for consistency with management's responses to our inquiries, to the basic financial statements and other knowledge we obtained during the audit of the financial statements. However, we did not audit the required supplementary information, and we do not express an opinion and provide any assurance on that required supplementary information. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the concluding letter, right? If you would like, we can talk at a very high level about the financial statements themselves. Generally, right, the financial statements are the responsibility of management, right? They are the ones that prepare the financial statements. And so, we as auditors, right, the financial statements are not necessarily our responsibility. However, I can talk about them at a very high level. If you have very specific questions, those are questions that management will have to answer. Yeah? Okay, so as far as our audit goes, right, so if you look at the financial statements, pages 3 through 5 is our independent auditor's report, followed by management's discussion and analysis. After that, from pages 11 to 15 are the actual statements, followed by the notes in pages 16 to 48. And lastly is the required supplementary information related to pension and OPEB. Yeah, so I'll cover first our report, our independent auditor's report. So starting on page 3. So the report has some basic sections, including our opinion, our basis for opinion, the emphasis of matter that we included this year, the responsibilities of management for the financial statements, auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statements, required supplementary information, and then other reporting required by government auditing standards. So as far as our opinion goes, similar to last year, we're issuing an unmodified opinion, right? Basically a clean opinion stating that to the best of our knowledge, the financial statements are not materially misstated. Yeah. As far as the basis for opinion goes, we conducted our audit in accordance with GAS and government auditing standards. We did include an emphasis of matter this year, and this is, I guess it came up in our review process internally. This is not a paragraph that we have included in the past, but because HART is a component unit of the city, we decided that it was best for us to include this. And so it's a short paragraph at the bottom of page 3. Oh, okay. Oh, so the emphasis of matter states, as discussed in Note B, the financial statements present only the activities of HART and do not purport to and do not present fairly the financial position of the city as of June 30, 2024. The changes in its financial position or its cash flows for the fiscal year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Our opinion is not modified with respect to this matter. Right. So basically, just because HART is a component unit of the city, we are just stating the fact that these are HART's financial statements and they do not present the financial position or the statement of activities of the city. Yeah. As far as responsibilities of management for the financial statement, management's responsibilities are the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with US GAAP. For the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement. The evaluation, whether there are any conditions or events that raise substantial doubt about HART's ability to continue as a going concern for 12 months after report issuance. As far as the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements, our responsibilities are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinion, and then also in performing an audit in accordance with GAS and government auditing standards, we exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. Identify and assess the risk of material misstatement of the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error, and design and perform audit procedures responsive to those risks. Obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of HART's internal control. Evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates made by management. And then finally, to conclude whether in our judgment there are conditions or events considered in the aggregate that raise substantial doubt about HART's ability to continue as a going concern for a reasonable period of time. After that, it's the required supplementary information, which I kind of talked about already. And then lastly, this other reporting required by government auditing standards. So we will also be issuing a report required by government auditing standards that'll be dated the same day, November, sometime next week, about our consideration of HART's internal controls over financial reporting and our test of its compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements and other matters. The purpose of that report is solely to describe the scope of our testing of internal control over financial reporting and compliance and the results of that testing, and not to provide an opinion on the effectiveness of HART's internal control over financial reporting or compliance. So that report, like I mentioned, will be issued at the same time. Yeah. I guess prior to me covering the financial statements at a high level, are there any questions about anything that I spoke about or any specific questions about the financial statements or about the audit?
Members, question? Go ahead, Roger.
So as I understand it, the capital assets that HART has are depleted when those assets are transferred to the department. Is that the way the financial statement is set up?
So yeah, so I guess, last year, right, was the first time that the capital assets were transferred to the city, right, to a DTS. And so on June 30th, 2023, approximately $3 billion worth of capital assets were transferred to the city. And so those are recorded as a transfer out, right? And so last year there was a big transfer out, $3 billion. This year there were no such transfers made. Yeah, and I believe the next time will be during fiscal year 25. Is that correct?
So basically, you show largely just work in progress at this point.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Everything goes into construction in progress. basically,
Right.
Into the capital project. And then when we send it to you, then we take it out.
Take
See,
it
in
out and add it to
25,
the
we're
city's property
transferring-
ledger.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And we worked very closely with BFS to make
Yeah,
sure that
yeah.
that got transferred appropriately. In 25, we'll have a transfer of some vehicles. I think 2 have already been transferred to you, 2 more probably in the short term. So we'll reflect those in 25, and then in 26, it'll be segment 2 assets will be transferred.
Okay, for our planning purposes at DTS, we'll probably need an estimate of the property value for insurance purposes for our budget.
We
Yeah.
can provide that with you. I know we worked with someone at the city on insurance on that, but
probably
yeah, we'll get with you
Thomas,
guys
yeah.
separately and make sure that you have the information you need.
Any other questions? Just one, Charles and Taylor. Were there any significant adjustments that you had to make that was not proposed by HART?
No, there were no significant adjustments that were made as a result of our
No
audit.
significant audit adjustments. Okay, thanks. Does that conclude your report?
Oh, I mean, if you would like, I can talk about some, high level summary about the financial statements. If not, if you guys are good, then I'm good.
I'm good with, with the financial statements. Members, we're okay. We don't have to have Charles go through the financial statement. Okay, since this is a non-action item, I'll ask again, are there any public testimony either in person or online? Okay. If nothing, thanks, Charles.
Okay.
Thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item is adjournment. We are adjourned, people. Thanks. It's 10:20.
Board of Directors meeting of HART, Friday, November 15th, 2024. It's approximately 10:35 a.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order first by taking roll. Kika,
Present.
Anthony Alto,
Present.
Don Takeuchi Apuna is excused, Lisa Baker.
Present.
Is Natalie on yet? No, okay. Natalie is going to be joining us. She's joining right now. Okay, I'll come back to her. Roger Morton,
Present.
Christopher Moylan,
I'm here until 12:30 or 1 when I have to leave for my Stanford Advisors Memorial Service where I'm speaking.
okay, you're on the same schedule as Roger, so that's fine. Thank you. Joe O'Donnell is excused. Ed Sniffen is excused. Art Tolentino is excused. Robert Yu.
Here.
And Natalie, have you joined us?
I am here. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And the chair, Colleen Hanabusa, is here. First of all, is there any member of the public who wishes to testify on any agenda item sitting here? No? Anyone? No? We did receive a letter, which is, and I'm going to take it up now only because it doesn't quite fit anywhere. It was by a person who was objecting to the rates. I mean, the fact that they felt that the amount for the bus as well as the HART would be going up. And this person had objections to that. Did every member receive a copy of that letter? Is there one who wishes to address her concerns? I just have one statement, which is that I think that the public is unaware, unless you guys have changed it, that it's really like a commission that sets that. It's not you, Roger, or Robert, or bus operators who set the fares. There is a fare commission who does that. And I think if the public becomes more aware of that, they will not feel like somehow we do it. And once the fare commission makes a recommendation, it's my understanding that the final fares are then set by city council. Am I right on that, you guys who are affected by that? So thank you. Anyone wishes to address that? Do you wish to address it, or?
No.
You don't wish to address it?
No.
Okay. Anyway, with that, that was in response to the letter that we received. Is there anyone else who wishes to address fares or anything like that? If not, I believe that's the only issue we had, right? That's the only thing we received. Okay, with that, we'll go to agenda item number 3, which is Executive Director and CEO's update. But before that, is there anyone here who wishes to address agenda item number 3? I assume no one online. Lori is off island, so Rick, it's yours. Is there?
Yeah, like as you just mentioned, Lori's away on vacation. There weren't any items that were agendized for this topic, so I don't have a report this morning.
Okay. It's kind of hard for anyone to ask questions of somebody who has no report.
I have a question.
Kika has a question.
So it was mentioned in the POC meeting, or referred to in the POC meeting, we're going to be going through a change in administration on the federal level. Has there been any indication as far as how that might impact FTA, its personnel, the PMOC, its personnel, and who our points of contacts may or may not be going forward?
Yes, we have had some conversation about that. We don't know exactly how it will play out, of course. The administrator, the acting administrator at the FTA will likely step down by the end of the year. As the appointee process works its way through both at the Department of Transportation and at the FTA, there will be a gap in having an administrator. There are civil service, high-level civil service folks at the FTA, the primary 2 of which we have worked with over the years and we have a good relationship with. There's a question as to how much actual, if policy type matters come up, how much decision making will actually take place during that window of time, but we do have contacts there. At the FTA level, or at the regional level, we don't anticipate change. There wasn't change during the last administration change. And in terms of PMOC, there should not be any change either. The PMOC have been in place for quite some time, and I don't anticipate any change with their contract. We do have one member of the PMOC who's going to be retiring soon, so we will have a new member coming onto the PMOC, but the rest of the team and the firm that's used should not change.
The regional level FTA as well as the PMOC, are those positions open for potential change, or is it
I
just?
think that the regional position would be open to change, would be subject to change at the direction of the new administration in DC. But Ray has been in place for quite some time. He didn't change during the last administration change, so we'll have to see how that plays out. I don't expect a change there, but could happen. PMOC is under contract. I'm not sure how long their contract term is, so I don't really think that's something that would change.
Okay. If you could maybe keep us in the loop
Sure.
as information becomes available. Okay.
Will do.
Thanks.
Following up on that, is Ray Tellis a civil servant, or is he an appointee?
He's not an appointee.
He's a civil servant?
He's senior, but he's not an appointee.
So he should be okay unless he chooses to retire.
I don't know exactly how it works.
I think that's correct. That's my impression,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure for 100%.
Yeah. Because I remember the last go around, they all left.
They sometimes choose to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So while we're on the subject of personnel and retirement, you've been threatening to retire for a while.
Only 3 years, but
I'm just wondering if there's any update on that.
no updates. There's a couple of things that we want to get done here. One of which is getting the FTA comfortable and the adjustments that we talked about earlier in terms of the financial impact of CCGS and get all that reset. So we're working on that. We've been having some dialogue with the FTA. So that's one thing that I want to make sure gets put in place. So nothing definitive, but I probably will be stepping away in the near term, but that date hasn't been set yet.
Near term is what, 6 months, a year?
3 months?
Oh, come on. You could do better than that, can't you?
We'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
Okay. Well, thanks for your service, and I hope you stay on as long as you can. Thanks, Chair.
Any further questions under a non-agendized matter? Anything else, members? I'm sorry, if you guys have anything, can you yell out, because you're not on this screen, so I may forget to turn around. Anything, Chris or Natalie? No?
No, and it's only fair. I can't see you either. All I can see is the Board of Directors meeting agenda.
Ah, that's okay, you're not missing anything. But thank you. Okay, so we're going to move off of agenda item number 3. We're going to go to agenda item number 4, which is the status report on Hitachi Rail Honolulu joint venture delay claim. Members, you remember the last time we did receive an update, and we will have to go into executive session because this is an ongoing legal matter. So with that, I would like a motion that we enter into executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-4. Well, before I do that, for the attorneys who are here, and Mary, is there anything that you can say publicly before we go into executive session? Anything? Doesn't look like. How about Daniel? I thought Daniel was here.
I saw Danny here.
Do you
Well, he's
have
in the back.
anything that you can say publicly before we go into executive session? And I see Lisa. Can you provide an update without violating attorney-client privilege? Either of you?
Seems reluctant.
Okay, so, members of the public, we apologize, but this is an ongoing litigation matter. So, members, I would like to have a motion that we enter executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-4 and 92-5, subsection A, subsection 4. And this is, of course, to consult with our attorneys on questions and issues on a matter pertaining to the board's powers, duty, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. Can I have such a motion?
Chair, so moved.
So moved.
Second?
I'll
Second, Chris? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, Chair?
Yes, Natalie?
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to state for the record that I understand I'm not allowed to attend the executive session. This is due to the confidentiality agreement and the difference in opinion between Corporation Counsel and the Attorney's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, any other discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent to enter into executive session? Hearing no objection, we will enter into executive session. Members of the public who are not involved in this, we apologize, but you have to leave this room because we have people on Zoom. So if you're not involved in this specific matter, thank you very much. If you could wait outside. Thank you and welcome back to the Board of Directors meeting of Friday, November 15th, 2024. It's approximately 12:45 p.m. As you know, when we went out on the status report on Hitachi Rail Honolulu joint venture delay claim. And first of all, is there anyone here who would like to give testimony on this specific item? Anyone? No? So because it was executive session and under the Sunshine Law, we have to provide a summary of what was discussed. So what was discussed was the board received legal advice and a status on a pending, I guess for lack of a better description, it's like a delay claim on the filed, not filed officially in court, but raised by Hitachi Rail Honolulu joint venture for segments 1 and 2 of the rail system. For those of you who are unfamiliar, 1 is basically what we used to call phase 1 and 2. It is Farrington Highway, the West Oahu is what we call it, and then Kamehameha Highway, segment 1, and segment 2 is what we call AGS, which is the airport guideway system. So basically what has been completed to date was a claim by Hitachi for delays. And we received an update on from our respective attorneys, and no vote was taken, and no other discussion other than the status. So with that, I'm going to move to agenda item number 5, which is report on the independent financial audit. Is there anyone here to give testimony on that other than the testifiers? No, hearing none. No one online. So with that, can Charles Gooden and Lawrence Chu of NAK, CPAs, NEK CPAs come forward? Now, go ahead. Just so that we're clear, you know, we just had a briefing from them and in the Finance Committee meeting. And I also would like to be very clear, right now, we have lost what we call quorum, voting quorum, as well as in-person quorum. So we are able to continue to take testimony. However, no votes can be taken on any item. And at the next board meeting, we have to give a summary of what happened today. So with that, the report on independent financial audit, members, we'll get to do a quick summary of what they gave us before, and if anybody has any questions or further questions, we'll take them at that time. So can you please proceed? And we're sorry you have to do it again, but this is the full board meeting versus the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So, you know, as we presented to the Finance Committee, you know, we conducted our audit for Hart's financial statements as of and for the year ended June 30, 2024. Our audit report, which is not yet finalized, is currently in draft state, but it has an unmodified opinion, basically that the financial statements are not materially misstated. You know, we did not have any audit adjustments as a result of our audit procedures. And so the financial statements as presented are based on Hart's financial information that they provided to us. Yeah. I guess quickly I can cover our concluding letter. So we audited the financial statements of Hart, a component unit of the City and County of Honolulu, as of and for the year ended June 30, 2024. We previously provided our planning communication letter, which was dated August 15, 2024, and hopefully all of you have received and read that. As far as significant audit matters go, management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies, which are disclosed in Note B to the financial statements. Hart adopted GASB Statement 99. However, that statement did not have a material effect on Hart's financial statements. There were no transactions entered into by Hart during the year for which there was a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus, and all significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period. Accounting estimates are an integral part of the financial statements prepared by management and are based on management's knowledge and experience about past and current events and assumptions about future events. The most sensitive estimates included in the financial statements are related to the pension and OPEB liabilities, construction delay claims, and then right of use assets and subscription assets. We evaluated the key factors and assumptions used to develop these estimates and determined that they're reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. There were no difficulties encountered as part during our audit, and there were no disagreements with management during the course of our audit. To the best of our knowledge, taking it back. Prior to the issuance of our financial statements, we will have management sign what's called a management rep letter. That letter will be dated the same date as the financial statements. We've already provided a draft of that letter to Rick and the team. They've reviewed it and given us all of their comments, and so that letter should be ready to go as soon as we are. As to the best of our knowledge, Hart did not have any consultations with other independent accountants during the audit year. And as far as the supplementary information goes, the supplementary information, including management's discussion and analysis and all of the pension and OPEB schedules, are included to supplement the basic financial statements. And, we did perform certain limited procedures to those, to that information, including inquiries of management, comparing the information for consistency with management's responses, and to the basic financial statements themselves, and they appeared consistent. However, we are not expressing an opinion or providing any assurance on the required supplementary information. And as I mentioned, right, the audit report will be an unmodified opinion, and that's kind of all we have.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Any questions?
Chair?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the auditors for the report. Just a couple of things. So you said that there were no audit adjustments, which I think is like probably the first time that's happened. So were there any past adjustments at all? Or any adjustments at all?
Based on the audit procedures we performed, and working closely with Rick and Larry and Richard and the team, we kind of talked through any of the items that potentially could be things that would need to be looked at. And however, based on the information they provided us, no, there were no audit adjustments or past adjustments.
Wow, that's great. So I think the team then deserves a really congratulatory note on that, because as I said, in the past, there have been quite a number of adjustments. And then I just, you may be aware that we're looking at trying to get an internal audit function set up. So I would just like you to, if you wouldn't mind, re-emphasize the role that you take with respect to internal controls, and also what you need to do to look for fraud. The auditor's role has changed in the last 20 years. First, it was just material misstatements, but now you have to consider fraud. So can you just kind of briefly describe what you do for that, just so the board understands, and the public as well?
As far as our responsibility as the auditors, right? If any indications of fraud come up during the course of our audit, if anything comes to our attention, we definitely take it up, the chain of command, depending on who potentially may be the one perpetrating such fraud, right? As far as general procedures that we perform, we always conduct inquiries of management. We send out fraud inquiries to management and those charged with governance, including certain members of the board, asking whether or not, they have any knowledge of actual or potential fraud. And to the best of our knowledge, nothing came up during the audit period. If we see anything during our testing that would be an indication of fraud, then at that point, definitely, we would make the determination as to who the best person to speak to would be, depending on whether it's at a lower level or a higher level. We'd speak to different people. If at any point anything did come up that was fraudulent in nature, we would definitely bring that to the board's attention, because you guys are those charged with governance, and it would be our responsibility to do so, right? But like I mentioned, nothing came up during the course of this year's audit or previous audits that I've been a part of that raised to that level.
Okay, so just to clarify, you are not there to investigate fraud or to perform an investigation looking for fraud. It's only when you happen to see something that might be fraudulent. Is that correct?
If there are indications of that, then yes, we would definitely dig deeper, but that's not the reason for conducting the financial statement audit, correct?
Great, thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I have one, and it's just something that I caught my eye, and you said it. Why do you consider HART a component unit? What do you mean by a component unit of the city and county of Honolulu?
So this is a reporting issue, right? And so HART is I guess it's semi-autonomous, right? But so HART, from a reporting perspective, the city and county of Honolulu has to include HART along with other agencies, whether it be Board of Water, Oahu Trent, OTS, right? Certain entities are considered component units of the city, right? And HART being one of them. I guess from a standalone financial statement perspective goes, it didn't really have much impact, right? The financial statements for HART have basically stayed relatively the same. However, the city, on their presentation, for component units, you can either have blended component units or discretely presented component units. And HART previously was, for several years, erroneously presented by the city as a discretely presented component unit. And last year they figured out that HART should be blended. And the reason for that, honestly, is because of the transfer of assets going from HART to the city. The determination was made like, oh yeah, actually, HART is not going to be the one maintaining and operating the rail moving forward. That's the city. And because of that, HART should be a blended component unit instead of a discretely presented component unit. But I mean, as far as HART's standalone financial statements, it has almost no impact.
I am really confused as to what is a blended component unit versus, what was the other one? A
Discretely presented.
It's discretely independent component unit. So who makes that decision? Do you make it as the
We do
auditor?
not make that decision. No, that's based on accounting rules. But at the same time, that falls under the city's, their ACFR, right? Their annual report. And should have almost no impact on HART's financial statements.
So when you said it falls, so is it like the city's audit and it says HART is a,
So if
discretely-
you looked at their ACFR, it would include all of that information.
It's not CAFRE anymore, it's what, CFAR?
Yeah.
CFR?
ACFR.
ACFR? Why don't CAFRE, I just got used to CAFRE, yeah. So if you look at that, it'll say that HART is a distinctly component unit.
It's a
A blended
blended
component.
component unit of the city, correct.
I'm still confused, but okay. Now, members, before I go any further, I do want to remind you that because we do not have quorum, we are not able to ask each other or have discussion. We can ask those testifying, including HART staff when they come up. We can ask them questions, but we are not to have a discussion among ourselves. It sounds strange, but that's the rule. Anyone else have any questions?
Quick question.
Yes.
Can you repeat what ACFR stands for?
Annual comprehensive financial report.
Okay, thanks.
Right?
Free is better. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Okay.
And sorry to have kept you here this
No.
long.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, you too.
The next item is agenda item number 6, members, monthly update on critical position recruitment.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
May I testify for the last agenda item?
Oh, I'm sorry. I asked if there was anyone here to testify, and I was told no. But you
Yeah.
are, I'm sorry, please go ahead. You know, we have a, what is it, a 2-minute
Thank
rule?
you.
Yeah.
Angela Melody Young, on behalf of World Cares,
Okay.
a grassroots movement. So we advocate for legislations relating to education, and health, safety, transportation, and environmental protection with our team of students from Department of Education Public Schools. And so I'm just interested in the CARES, or not the CARES thing, the HART audit funding. So I'm wondering for the HART funding, is this an internal audit being performed on behalf of the county's office or a third-party contractor hired to conduct an audit? Because, for example, the CARES Act audit, so basically the Coronavirus COVID-19 Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, there was $2.2 trillion an economic stimulus bill passed by the 116th United States Congress, signed into law by the president. And it was in response to the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, and the federal funding was dispersed to various counties. And the Honolulu County's CARES Act got audited to provide a transparent perspective at what's going on internally with the county's use of the CARES Act funds. So is the audit being conducted just like the CARES Act fund audit as an internal process, or is that like a separate office conducting the audit?
So you're asking if the, this
If
audit
the
that was
office that presented
conducted
just
is-
now,
Yeah, that it, are you asking if this audit that was just discussed, if similarly, like what was done to audit the CARES Act? Is that what your question is?
yeah. So is it a county's office that's conducting the audit, like the CARES Act fund audit? Or is that office separate and providing like a subjective analysis as like a separate office aside from the county's office?
The Chief Financial Officer, Rick Keene, will address your question.
Oh, hi, Angela. Thanks for calling in. No, this is not an internal audit, and it's nothing to do with the CARE Act funding. This is a required financial statement audit, and it's conducted by an independent accounting firm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was kind of setting an example about the CARES Act funding audit, which was an internal city audit, because HART is a function under the purview of the Honolulu County.
Right. We have had
So-
internal audits performed in the past, and we have discussed additional internal audit services. This is not an internal audit. This is a financial statement audit required that we have performed, and it's done by an independent firm.
Okay, that's good. Because sometimes it requires like a subjective perspective, right? For example, when the AG had to conduct the audit for the wildfire recovery, they had to hire a third-party contractor instead of the state's attorney. Okay, thank you.
Anyone have any questions? No? Thank you very much, Angela. Anyone else to testify on report on the independent financial audit? Not? Thank you. The next item is going to be agenda item number 6, which is the monthly update on critical position recruitment. It's supposed to be Sandy, but I don't see her. Are you gonna do it, Rick?
Yeah, Sandy's out of the office this week. Sandy's out of the office this week, so I'm gonna cover this. I think a very positive report this month. We have 7 new hires. 5 of them have already started. 2 more have accepted and have start dates established. One we talked about last month, that was the Director of Design and Construction, that will be a consultant, but the other 6 are part staff. So some very talented, professional young people coming on board, so we're very happy about that. We have 4 other tentative offers outstanding that we feel very confident about. Are there any questions?
Any questions by anyone? So the total number is, the total count is 98. And we have, I'm just going on this, we have 18 city vacant unfunded. And we have 17 city vacant funded. Now, we used to have 135, so we've cut that down to now 98. And out of the 98, 18 positions are not funded. Okay. So active employees, according to this, is 37. And
37 plus the 5 that started, so 42
Yeah.
is the current count.
okay. Anyone else have any questions on the chart?
Chair?
Yes.
Just quickly on the CFO position, because I seem to recall last time we decided that we weren't going to have.
Yeah, we talked about that last month, and indicated that we had that kind of on the side right now. We haven't really talked to qualified candidates that were on track with what we were looking for. We are looking at a replacement for me, and the person that we've been talking to, I think would be a really good hire. Haven't gotten confirmation from him yet, but he also has financial background. So if he comes on board, then we would reconsider whether we need that position or not. So right now it's kind of on hold.
Thanks.
Chair?
Yes.
Just one quick comment. So I guess just by reading this, from October 1st to November 8th, we lost 3 employees, right? Because in your budget document, the actual head count as of September 30th is 40. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds.
And the reason I'm asking is that I think at the last meeting, when Sandy proposed, when Sandy was presenting the information, we asked for the net. How many have you added? How many have you lost? So I know she's not here. And just for anyone that's interested in it, that's the information that I could gather.
Okay.
Anyone else? So, Rick, so when you say we're not filling CFO, is that Director of Finance too?
Yes.
Okay.
We tried recruiting Director of Finance and got absolutely no resumes, so we changed the title on our posting to CFO to see if that would generate any more interest. We've gotten a few over time, but no one that we pursued.
How about the procurement, Director of Procurement? Do we have that?
We have the title Deputy Director of
Right.
Procurement. He heads up the procurement area, so we weren't really looking for anyone over him. And he has a team.
And what about the Human Resources?
Sandy, we don't have an official ASO.
Right.
And that is something that is, I don't remember if that's one of the positions or not, but we have talked about that. I do think we need to consider as ASO person. But right now, Sandy just reports directly to Lori.
Yeah, I don't think I saw an ASO. I'm just going by the hats that Dean Hazama used to wear. And yeah, that was one of them too. Okay, anyone else? Not, thank you very much. So that's, that was agenda item number 6, monthly update on critical position recruitment. Anyone else here to testify? Hearing none. We're gonna move to our, agenda item number 7, which is committee leadership and membership. Is there anyone here to testify on that? So members, I am going to, because it's the committee membership and the chairmanship is basically up to the chair, what I'm going to do, because I believe that the committee structure and is going to be conditioned upon how the final rules work out. But I do want to have Chris and Lisa assigned, so I'm gonna assign them. For the rest of you, you haven't really moved anywhere, so where you are, simply because, you know, we have to, until we do our rules, I don't wanna mess around with anything, but let me just go quickly through it. So government affairs and legal matters, we should change that so we can say GLAM. Anyway, Anthony Alto is chair, Ed Sniffen is vice chair. The voting members are, of course, Roger Morton, and put Chris and Lisa on government affairs and legal matters. Finance, Robert Yu is chair. We're gonna leave the vice chair vacant for now, and it's Roger Morton, Art Tolentino, Kika Bukowski, and Lisa Baker. Project oversight is Kika Bukowski. The vice chair is vacant right now. We'll leave it vacant until we figure out where we are. On the voting membership is Anthony Alto, Ed Sniffen, Art Tolentino, Robert Yu, Chris Mullen, and Lisa Baker. That's almost everybody. Human resources, for now, Lisa, I'm gonna ask you to chair it. There, we don't see a lot of activity, but just in case we do have it. And Anthony Alto is your vice chair. Roger Morton and Art Tolentino are your other members. Internal audit, it's vacant. This was another Edwin Young position. So we're gonna make Chris Moylan the chair for now until we decide on the rules. Robert Yu is vice chair. Kika Bukowski and Art Tolentino are on that committee as well. Executive Matters Committee is set forth in our bylaws, and I'm just chair automatically. Anthony Alto is vice chair. Voting members are Kika Bukowski and Robert Yu. So anyway, if anyone missed that, so for everyone else except for Chris and Lisa, nothing's changed for now. We have to get to the rules, and then we'll know, we'll have a better sense as to where we're going. But in case anything comes up, and just so you know where you're voting, we have voting membership, okay? So anyone here, anyone else wants to testify or make any comments on the committee leadership and membership?
Question.
Yes.
Is it possible to get what you just stated in writing? Mahalo.
And then I'll give it back to Cindy, and Cindy can post it. Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay, we're gonna move to agenda item number 8, which is discussion on amendments to the rules and operating procedure of the Board of Directors. Members, I'm gonna defer this matter for a variety of reasons. One is we don't have a voting quorum, but in addition to that, if you look at the latest version that has been posted, Laurie had comments in there, and I believe that it's really not fair for us to discuss the rules without her here, because she had some concerns about whether or not the rules were interfering with her management of the HART personnel. So I think this is something that we should have a good discussion on, and I was originally gonna take it piecemeal, but I thought, you know, we'd end up probably going back and doing it again anyway. So I'm gonna defer this to our next meeting. I've also had a request, and I may decide to do this instead. And if anybody has any strong feelings, please let Dan or Cindy know. And that is whether we would reconstitute the PIG. because the pig then had a more flexibility. So I have a request to reconstitute the pig on the rules. As you all know, we had one before. We only adopted a portion of the rules, and that was the one dealing with the executive officer of the board. So we still have to go look at everything. So if you have strong feelings one way or the other, please let Dan Gluck or Cindy know about that. And that's whether we would do a pig. Well, hello, Angela. You look just like you do over the Zoom. Okay, so anyone else here on the discussion of amendments on the rules and procedures of the Board of Directors? Again, we are deferring that till the
Chair?
next meeting. Yes,
May I just make one quick comment?
sure.
Yeah, so thank you for deferring because I think that's a good thing to do. But I just wanted to let the board know that I've been in contact with somebody who's worked with the internal audit functions and setting them up in various organizations. And he's provided me quite a lot of feedback on the RFP in particular. But I think that's going to impact the rules. So I will be going through them a little bit more thoroughly. I think I will have a number of requested changes in that area. So just wanted to alert the board members to that.
Thank you. It's always easier to work with something in writing as to what you're I'm sorry, we can't have a discussion. Sorry about that. I saw Dan Gluck kind of stare at me. Just so that we're all clear, we can't have discussions among ourselves because we don't have quorum. So I'll just say thank you. Everybody's laughing at me. That's not nice. Anyway, okay, anyone else on discussions on amendments and rules and operating procedures of the Board of Directors? If not, we're going to move on to agenda item number 9. Summary of board members' requests made at the November 15, 2024 Board of Directors meeting. Cindy, do we have any?
So I think I just have Robert's renewed request for the HR reporting that we include the net gain and loss of Hart employees. That's all I have.
I requested
Unless I missed something.
presentation on station designs. I think that's actually kind of urgent.
Oh, was that in this?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think at the last board meeting, I asked if we could have a presentation on the art program, which I forgot to remind when we were going through the summary of board member requests. I forgot to ask you to add that. If we could do that for next time, please. We can't discuss things.
Oh.
Could I talk to
I imagine. Yeah, you can talk to Cindy.
I'll put it on the list.
Oh.
I'll put it on the list, yes.
Anyone else? Yes,
Yeah.
Lisa.
I think there was a request of Corey to note on the monthly progress report on the schedule, the critical path schedule for the whole project, when something might impact some of that, those float days.
Oh, that was on page, oh, I
It's on
shouldn't
page
say.
39.
Yeah.
I wrote down bullets, but I don't know if that was just my solution. Just something.
Okay, anyone else have any board member requests? November 15, 2024, that's this meeting. If not, then members, we are on adjournment, agenda item number 10. So hearing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.